So this is really special to me. It's something straight out of my grandmother's kitchen. Eggplant Parmesan. I'll show you to make it without an oven. Let's get started.
Let's get started by preparing the main star, the eggplant. I'll be using some Japanese eggplant, only because that's what's available to me. Use what you have. Let's cut off the ends and peel. I know I just mentioned in my recent Mapo Nasu video that you don't really need to peel or purge Japanese eggplant, which is true, but I will anyway, maybe out of habit, or really I just couldn't see doing this dish any other way. I'll be using about 5 to 6 small eggplant, but 1 large eggplant would work too. Let's slice at an angle into thin strips about a ½ centimeter or a 1/4 inch thick. To purge, I will use a strainer and a bowl to catch any liquid. I'll layer the eggplant and lightly salt it. Continue slicing and layering in the strainer with salt. You could do this with plates in between so the eggplants aren't stacked directly on top of each other. I'm doing it this way just to work with the space I have. They will still purge and have a nice texture, so I'm not too worried about stacking them like this. Make sure to salt the top layer, place a plate on top, and some kind of weight to add a little pressure. Let's set those aside for 30 minutes or longer. In the meantime, let's put our tomato sauce together. We will need an onion and a few cloves of garlic. Let's cut the onion in half and dice finely. Let's dice the garlic also finely. Set that in its own little bowl. Okay, and that's all the prep we need to do for the tomato sauce. Let's get out a large pot, heat it with a little olive oil, and sweat the onions. You can add a little salt to help them along. After they soften, let's add in the garlic. I stagger their entrance just a bit as the garlic burns quicker than onions, so I want to give the onions a head start. Give that a stir. Just this fragrance right here smells like home. I like to add red chili flakes here to give them a chance to saute and release some of their oils, though you can add them later with the tomatoes or skip them. In Japan I have to use cans of cut tomatoes like these. The cans of crushed tomatoes I grew up with are not available, so I gotta crush them myself later. I'll use about 3 cans. These cans of cut tomatoes are unsalted, so they really need some seasoning. Let's season with some salt and pepper. Some canned crushed tomatoes may already be seasoned, so just be mindful of what you're using and season accordingly. Next, a little wine, which I like to pour in the empty tomato can to get any remaining bits of tomato and pour it into the next one, and the next, and pour it into the sauce. Give that a stir so it's well incorporated, and cover it up. Let that simmer while we fry off the eggplant. We need to prepare a rack for our landing spot, and 2 dishes for the breading station. Really, it's an egging station. We won't be using any breadcrumbs. 1 dish will have flour, and the second dish will have a couple beaten eggs, and that's it. It's really just coating the eggplant in an eggy crust. The flour just helps wet eggs stick to wet eggplant. If you want to coat in breadcrumbs too, go for it, but it's not necessary. Let's move the sauce to the side and get a frying pan out. Let's check in on the eggplant. A decent amount of liquid has been purged, which you can toss. Pat dry any remaining moisture. Let's run it through the flour and egg stations. Make sure to coat the eggplant completely in flour and dip in egg. Heat up the frying pan with olive oil, swirl it around, knock off any excess egg, and fry one by one. Make sure you have enough space around them so they don't stick. After they start to form a crust, flip and cook on that side until golden brown. Line the rack with a little paper towel to wick oil. Remove to let cool. And there's our first batch. Continue this process until you coat all of the eggplant. You can systematically add new eggplant to one side of the frying pan, flip and move them to the other side as they cook. That way you can keep the train moving, cooking eggplant at different stages in a continuous flow. We have all our eggplant fried, so let's get ready to assemble. The sauces come together really well. The tomatoes do break apart with a touch of a spoon, which is great, and it would be perfectly acceptable to use the sauce just like this. But as I'm used to using a smoother sauce from crushed tomatoes, I like to briefly blitz them with a hand blender. Finally, I'll add in some fresh basil just to steep with the heat off. And that's looking ready. Grab 2 oven-safe dishes, or 1 large one if you have an oven. First, add a little ladle of sauce at the bottom of the dish. Add a layer of eggplant. Cover in sauce. Add a good melting cheese like mozzarella if you have it. And layer eggplant on top of that. Repeat this process until your baking dishes are filled to the top. Generously cover the final layer in sauce. And instead of melting cheese first, I will grate some Parmigiano Reggiano on top. After all, what would this dish be without it? Parmesan brings rich umaminess to the dish, but I don't want it directly on top as I don't want it to burn and lose that delicate flavor, so I put the melting cheese on top to lock it in. Wrap the dish in foil. I'm setting it on a tray just so I don't make a mess in the toaster. I'll set it in the toaster and bake for about 10 minutes. Do the same in an oven at about 170 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit, but that's just a guess. Obviously, I don't have an oven. While that bakes, leave a like. I'd really appreciate it. After 10 minutes, remove the foil and pop it back in for another 10. This is just to make sure the cheese is a nice golden color and not burnt by the time the rest of the dish has gotten a chance to cook. Check on it. This looks good, so I'll make a landing spot for it, carefully remove it, and let it cool while we cook the second one. I would wait 10 to 15 minutes for it to cool so the layers of cheese can help hold everything into place. You can eat it as is, or on Italian bread like a sub, or serve it on top of pasta like this. Let's give it a taste.
The eggplant's so soft you can cut right through it. Let's grab some penne and some sauce. It's like being back in Grandma's kitchen. Give it a try at home. So there we have it, eggplant parmesan. You can eat it on pasta, you can eat it as a sandwich, or just as is. If you don't have a toaster, you can do the same recipe in a frying pan. It's very similar to how I make chicken parmesan without an oven. You can check that out here. Thanks for watching.